Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kelly Simonton. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Wyoming in the United States, and I'll be presenting today on developing and testing the Spectrum Institute educational courses, online modules for the teaching styles, and a pilot study that we conducted at the University of Wyoming with some of our pre-service physical education teachers. So I'll give you a little bit of background on the need for these online training tools, and then a little bit about what we found from the academic year that we tested and evaluated the program with some of our pre-service teacher majors. So we know that the data suggests that the one-size-fits-all approach to teaching physical education really has many downsides, and a need for diversity within instruction for offering physical education is needed. But despite the evidence on the need for diversity in instruction, a more traditional and limited direct approach continues to persist with our physical education teachers in schools. And it really limits and provides an inability to implement a variety of models-based practices that we know have shown evidence to be successful with teachers and students, as well as offering a variety of teaching styles. So given that we know offering a variety of teaching styles can really promote a more dynamic and motivated and engaged learning environment, we see that expert teachers tend to stick to a few ways of teaching, and utilizing the spectrum of teaching styles, for example, may not only enhance and break that chain that can promote a lack of engagement with students, but it can also unlock some of the models-based practices that we know can be very successful. Things like the sport education model, the teaching games for understanding model, the teaching personal and social responsibility model, for example, can really be enhanced if we have a greater set or diversity of teaching tools, which the teaching styles represent. However, teaching knowledge, attitudes, and context can really impact the use of strategies or teachers' confidence in implementing some of the strategies. And so, from a pre-service teacher perspective, it's been suggested that a more systematic and intentional approach to developing pre-service teacher knowledge about that spectrum of teaching styles, about a diversity of teaching styles, is really needed so that they don't continually use what maybe was previously ingrained in them from their K-12 experience. And so really thinking about what is the spectrum and in what ways would it benefit a pre-service teacher and their potential future program in knowing some of those variety of teaching styles. So just to give a quick reflection onto what most of you may know, the spectrum of teaching styles really provides a scope of strategies that are can be more reproduction in nature or productive in nature, and really provides a systematic approach to teacher and student-centered decision making in the learning experience. As you can see on the chart here, as we move from left to right, we can see that we progressively move from more teacher-centered instruction or decisions to more learner centered instructions, but the teacher must make a series of decisions in the pre-impact, impact, and post-impact phase to identify what part of the style is given to the teacher, what part of the style in the process is given to the learner, and which of these styles may be best suited for achieving specific goals that the teacher may have for their learner. So when learning about the spectrum of teaching styles, the teacher must be able to identify the learning goals they have. They must be knowledgeable about the style or the assumptions of the style. They must be able to plan towards the style, implement it, and give feedback and reflect on that style in any type of episode that they plan, which could run from 30 seconds to multiple minutes to multiple styles within a particular lesson. They must know how to give feedback, reflect, and implement those styles, be consistent when they're teaching towards that style with their students, and utilize the toolbox effectively at the end of the day, which really is considered that alignment between the goal, what they want their learners' experience to be like, and to know if they achieve it. So you can see the ability to apply the spectrum of teaching styles is quite complex, and so learning about them and practicing them is not easy. It takes a good bit of time and feedback from an instructor in a pre-service teacher environment. A couple of things we want to point out here that Pill and Rankin and Pill and Brown, as well as Sermpis and Digilitis all have shown us is the apprenticeship of observation that challenge a pre-service teacher's knowledge about what is teaching. They often enter a pre-service teacher program really having a naive perspective about what is teaching and what does it mean to be a teacher. And so Pill and colleagues suggest that foregrounding their pre-service teacher training experience in the spectrum of teaching styles as a foundational piece of what teaching and learning means is really necessary and will better support the pre-service teacher's experience as they become a teacher, and it forms what they refer to as a pedagogical accountability for pre-service teachers, meaning I am only achieving teaching and learning as a teacher if I'm utilizing the styles and I'm aligning them with the goals of my students, and recognizing that one way of doing things isn't the best way. There's multiple ways, and I have to be at times willing to give ownership and decision making to students, which really aligns with the mental model approach that Sermpis and Digilitis provide us, in that you have to gradually change pre-service teachers' conceptions of what teaching and learning can be for their students, and they will be more likely to adopt those spectrum of teaching styles or the variety of teaching strategies needed for students if we foreground these experiences in the spectrum of teaching. And so what tools might be needed? Some recent research that me and some of my colleagues have conducted really found that it's very possible to ground the pre-service teacher experience in and about the spectrum of teaching styles as it increases their comfortability in selecting and providing quality teaching strategies for their students. However, despite seeing the benefits of using the spectrum of teaching styles, we still see that pre-service teachers tend to focus on the reproduction cluster, which a lot of data has supported. And so branching and expanding their knowledge and ability to use more a variety of styles and really dip into that production style of the teaching styles, more training tools are needed. And so one example of maybe potentially expanding their training and expanding their knowledge is this idea of utilizing online teaching tools. One of those that has been developed by the Spectrum Institute of Teaching and Learning is the massive online open courses, or the MOOC modules, not only for the background about the spectrum, but for each specific spectrum teaching style. Based on some of the foregrounding techniques that we've utilized in that recent article that I just showed you, we found that pre-service teachers really wanted more videos and kind of less reading overall, more written examples of things like task sheets and lesson examples, greater description of the planning process, and finding out how do they actually target student goals and knowing which teaching style might be best for that particular environment, and more unpacking of the styles in an intentional way. So what are the intricate details of each style and what makes them unique? And we saw that some of the examples of the scenario-based learning we had previously used was successful in showing some examples. And so really expanding those scenarios so that the pre-service teachers are gaining a greater foundation of when and where they might want to use them. And so we partnered with the Spectrum Institute in looking at what could these modules look like, what are the important components, and then we wanted to really test, do they help enhance these areas of need that we've identified from pre-service teachers, PE specific majors who were looking to be trained in the spectrum of teaching styles. So the purpose of this particular research project pilot study was to look at the presentation of the MOOCs with PE pre-service teachers to see if they were providing benefits or not. Specifically, three kind of research questions guided us, which what was the process of developing the MOOCs and what was included, which I alluded to on the previous slide. To what degree do pre-service teachers' experiences associated with the MOOCs and the teaching styles influence their actual perceived usefulness and abilities and utilizing the spectrum, as all of these pre-service teachers were simultaneously learning about the styles and then engaging in field-based experiences in actual with K-12 students. And then what did the pre-service teachers report as the greatest strengths and weaknesses and potential needs for each of the MOOCs across one academic year, so one fall and spring semester. To give you a quick overview of the MOOCs for the online system and what they look like, when a pre-service teacher would open one of the modules for the styles, here's what they would see. So they'd see different tabs, overview, readings, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each of our MOOCs were kind of based on this warm-up, illustration, specialization, and evaluation process, which we called WISE. So you can see some of the deep details located here. I'll give you just a second just to read what the overview of each session would look like. So the WISE acronym, as laid out here, gave us a series of warm-up tasks for each teaching style, an illustration or example of each teaching style, some specialization, what is unique about this style and how might it be implemented specifically in specific teaching situations, and then of course the evaluation. Did the students actually learn the core concepts of the style as we sort of determined them? And so within each module, you can see here that if you were to open like the part 1 and part 2 tabs, for example, that there are some specific readings, videos, and evaluations within each teaching style and within each module. And so this is what the pre-service teachers were seeing as they went through the process. So in sum, for this project, we had 13 pre-service teachers complete Spectrum modules on styles A, B, C, D, and E. They also completed module steps on styles F and G, but these were not online in the MOOC system. These were in person. And all of the pre-service teachers participated in all of the foregrounding experiences, which included MOOCs in semesters 1 for styles, or excuse me, for an overview for the intro about the spectrum, and then styles A and B, and then semester 2, they completed online modules for C, D, and E, as well as I mentioned F and G that just weren't online. Each student participated in a series of lectures, practical workshop experiences. They then planned and implemented spectrum of teaching styles episodes to go out and participate in the field work experiences with students specifically in kindergarten through 5th grade. And then they completed a reflection assignment on every single style that they implemented. Now, pre-service teachers likely implemented multiple styles across their teaching experiences, but only reflected on these specific intentional plans that they used following the modules that they were trained. For the data collection on this particular project, this was a mixed methods approach, which included a pre-semester 1 and 2 and a post-semester 1 and 2 survey about their beliefs, about their ability to use and knowledge of the teaching styles. We also completed a series of data collection steps following each MOOC. So each style A, B, C, D, and E were included a reflective piece, an evaluation of both how they felt about the model and how they felt about the style they learned about. And you can see here some of the quantitative and qualitative tools that we utilize for that process. To give you a little background on data analysis for the quantitative piece, we looked at some basic descriptive statistics. We did have a small sample size, and so the power is quite low, although we did require 4 steps of data collection from a quantitative perspective. We did look at the reliability scores and composite mean scores for the perceived use and ability survey tool, and we looked at a repeated measures Mankova across those 4 time points. For the qualitative piece, we looked at similar analysis of open and axial coding, where we collected and created sort of a themed perspective for both their perspectives on the styles themselves as well as the modules, so the training tool itself using both inductive and deductive steps. So to give a quick breakdown on some of the quantitative pieces, you can see on the left, we have the reproductive cluster of styles, both perceived use and perceived ability, as well as the production styles on the lower right. We can see here we had statistical increases in usefulness and perceived ability from time 1 to time 4, which would be semester 1 time point 1 and 2, semester 2, which became time point 3 and 4. You can see that from time point 1 to time point 4, we had statistical increases in perceived use and ability. You can see that the final highest mean scores were the highest at the end of semester 2, so the end of the final training in those areas. A similar trend was found in styles F and G on the bottom right, that the highest mean scores were statistically higher than previous mean scores for semester 2 at the post data collection. In summary, showing you that the students had progressive increases in most cases in their perceived use and ability of all of these teaching styles that were tested. We did see some fluctuation in a bit of a U perspective from point 1 to point 4, which we really believe is tied to potentially having a naive perspective about what the styles are at the very first semester, then actually learning about them and implementing them. The students had a more realistic perspective of what the style was and how they could use it. But by the end of their experience, which would be the final time point, that was the highest level of perceived usefulness and ability in terms of a mean score across our participants. From a qualitative perspective, this first slide kind of shows their specific reports. And these are generalized quotes for the trends that we felt were most prominent for the teaching styles themselves. And so we really saw that pre-service teachers reported strong advantages, that the Spectrum provided them a good variety of tools and teaching styles that they felt could meet more of their learners. And they were realizing having a larger bag of tools and skills as a teacher was going to be more beneficial for their students. However, they really identified that the time for planning and creating task sheets was a real barrier in terms of being prepared all the time to prepare for their students. And they really wanted more examples and creating more alignment in understanding when do I use a style and why. And this was related to some of those specific examples they either saw in their training and then experienced as a pre-service teacher. In terms of the modules, what did we find? We saw that pre-service teachers loved the videos. They really thought the video examples and the video descriptors of the strategies were really helpful, and that in the new module system, they really praised having more specific styles, task sheets within the styles that they could go try to implement, go directly and implement with their students. They did still feel that some of the training module pieces, like some of the videos, were a little bit too long, and they felt limited in that some parts of the module were more advantageous than others, despite going through the same process for every modules. And for example, you can see here the specialized components section was really seen as more beneficial than the others. One of the interesting things we found with pre-service teachers was that they wanted more room for discussion with their classmates. They wanted to see more reflection from their instructor. Even though the modules are developed to provide you feedback, what did you do well? What are some things you need to think about? They really wanted more interaction, even if it was on the online platform. So it was interesting to see how that might be added to future MOOCs and models. So overall, we see that students really progressed in a positive trajectory for their perceived usefulness and ability of the teaching styles, although that training practice tends to ebb and flow, particularly for the production cluster as compared to the reproduction. The modules really provided strong guidance for students, and all of the specific videos and examples were very much seen as strengths for students, although there are still concerns about drawing greater connections to when I use a style and why, and the modules not being so long in nature. Students require or ask for more interactions from their teacher and their classmates, which might be unique to the pre-service teacher experience. Overall, we believe that the Spectrum and the modules can really be used to enhance that sense of pre-service teacher instructional accountability, and the flipped classroom approach that these modules provide deeper foregrounding for students that enhances their in-class and in-field work experience. Students still need more quality examples of videos, task sheets, etc., to feel confident in the style, and that the modules need to create more examples of alignment for for pre-service teachers. utilizing these models in a more systematic approach was very advantageous. But future work should consider looking at how do we streamline the content? How do we specifically add more feedback opportunities within the different model components in and before the fieldwork experiences for students, and a deeper awareness on the complexity of the styles and when to use them. We also think that looking at these modules and testing them in other participant pools, like in-service teachers, like supervisors, maybe with graduate students, there's a variety of stakeholders that might find advantages of the styles unique that the pre-service teachers didn't have. And just creating more dialogue may be needed and tested within each of these different participant pools. Thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to reach out. My email is located here. And a special thank you to the Spectrum Institute of Teaching and Learning for their support in developing the MOOCs and testing them. And hopefully we'll be able to further test them in the future. Thank you.